corridors around those floodplain areas. Also, other characteristics are open space, parks, environmentally sensitive areas. There's some stormwater management features in this specific district, and then trail systems. So that's the existing land use based on the 2012 comprehensive plan that was adopted at that time. So what has changed since the 2012 comprehensive plan was the initial floodplain district, kind of dark in the picture there, that really encompassed approximately 70% of this property. And that was based on the 1985 floodplain maps and then the 2011 floodplain maps. Well, the upper reaches of the University Avenue, the University branch of Dry Run Creek was provided a better study in that area, so it really tightened up that floodplain along that stream corridor. So that's what is shown in the shaded area as the existing floodplain, and that was studied and done in 2014, so it's really after the initial maps of 2011 and the land use map changes. So with that in mind, it really reduces that area of floodplain to about 30%. So that kind of is the first test is, hey, can we take a look at that remaining area as developable area or land for new development. So again, that floodplain was changed based on some changes downstream of that, detention basin north of the dome. So that was adjusted based on those characteristics. So basically the future or proposed land use map, staff recommends that we maintain that floodplain and greenways area through the central part of that, and then open up the remaining areas as planned development. So again, that delineates approximately 30% of that 42 acres in the floodplain. We will still apply stormwater management in this area and for the new development. It also pulls out some of those characteristics of those floodplain and greenway areas with trails within and around the adjacent development, and then there's already parks and open spaces around the site. So you have the golf course north and then Robinson Dresser fields on the east side. So we would like to enter this for discussion still, and then consider that for the commission comments and public, and then proceed to the public hearing at the next meeting on February 27th.
Thank you. So we will follow the same process for this item as we will for each of the agenda items this evening. Following the staff's introduction of the item, we invite the applicant if they have any words or would like to address the commission, any questions, anything else to add. We'll open it up for public comment at that point. Then if there's anything else that the applicant would like to add in response, and then back to the commission for any discussion in this item, direction, questions to staff in preparation for that public hearing. So next I'd like to ask if the applicant is present, if there's anyone from that group that would like to speak to the item, please come on up. And if not, then we will open it up for any public comments. If you have public comments to make, if you'll please come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. There's a lot of folks here, so please try to keep your comments succinct and on point. If someone's come up, try not to repeat a lot of the comments and information that's been made, but if you have new information or questions to add, that's helpful and gets as many folks heard as possible this evening. So we invite you to come up to the microphone if there's anyone who has questions or would like to speak to the item.
Good evening. My name is Jim Campbell. I live at 3207 Waterbury Drive in Cedar Falls, which is on the south side of Lexington Heights and south of where our development is. I am that waterway and green space. I am just directly, my home is directly east of that waterway. I am directly north of that retaining pond on the south side of Lexington on Waterbury Drive. And I just want to be known, we had a good meeting last night. We understand that we can't stop progress. I'm a fan, but it's very important. We have to look at the impact of what the existing houses are down there. We can't take any more water to the south side of that pond. That outlet on that pond on the south side of Waterbury Drive cannot take any more water. we have to make sure the development we do north and west, we drain a lot. I'm on the lowest lot in that area, and we take massive amounts of water. My house was built around the water flow, preventing water to get into my area, but we have to make sure whatever we do in that area, we cannot take any more water to the south side. We back it up everywhere. It comes across the road. It pushes up to the west, pushes up to the east. I back it up across my neighbor's yard. There's another neighbor here that has problems on that pond. We have to make sure on these heavy rains with so much development, it is getting so fast that pond, it pushes water back across everybody else's property. And sooner or later, last year was a wet year, and I want to make sure we didn't have water in our basement. I'm very thankful for that. And that's kind of my mental mark of if we didn't have it in 2018, we shouldn't have it in 19, 20, 21, 22. So whatever we do, let's make sure the impact of what we're doing north and west doesn't affect the water flow coming to the south side. So we have pictures, we have videos of water rushing, backing that pond up, coming across the road, filling that whole creek up, plumb level, and pushing water both ways. So we can bring those next time if we need to. Thank you.
My name is Carmen Mason, and I'm the neighbor that Jim was discussing. I live on 3108 Waterbury Drive, and my backyard is the pond, or is the retention pond. So we were able to move in 2014 after they did culvert work, which I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. He showed on the map how they were able to, I guess, make it a smaller version. And so we were able to then build our house on our lot. But since then, we built our house. Every year, it has flooded. It's come over the pond, come over the culvert, past the 500-year floodplain that it's not supposed to do. I have video. So it's definitely, and I have video of all the years. Every year, yearly, it's above the 500-year floodplain. So I definitely think progress, again, can't be stopped. However, we cannot take any more water down there. So it's close to our house. I would gladly email you the video, but I think we need to have some water studies down there because it's coming to us. And there's also behind us now is that they're going to develop more, which will be more water coming in. So I just think it's something that we need to look in before we just start building. So.
Anyone else? Again, following our process, any comments? We invite the applicant to address anything that's been mentioned or any additional comments from staff or information?
Yeah, I might add that as this development and other surrounding developments occur, those studies will be implemented as part of the preliminary plat process. So they need to look at the drainage areas and where that water is going so it does not impact those homes and properties downstream from these sites.
Commission discussion questions?
Yeah, so a couple questions because I wasn't here last time. So, right down Union Road to the south, what is that piece? Is that planned development right now that's existing?
Is it along the east side of Union Road?
Yes, east side of Union
I
Road.
believe there's a commercial node through there, kind of halfway between.
That's the neighborhood commercial mixed
Yes.
use then, actually. Okay, so we do actually have a little bit of that. So surrounding this, other than that little piece of commercial, is mostly low density residential, and then a little bit of medium density residential straight to the west is what the land use map shows right now, right?
Yeah, the existing Wild Horse west of Union is medium density, and then everything south, kind of along 27th, is medium density, but other than that, it's low density.
So in terms of plan development, I think people would probably be interested to know what the density relative is allowable in that relative to the low or medium density that's adjacent to it.
Well, planned is based on the plan, so it kind of signifies the zoning and what that plan is. So it could be low, medium, or high density. It's kind of.
I mean, it does have the option to go to high density.
Yes, that's correct.
Depending on the plan, but then people should know that, the plan is subject to approval of what is considered reasonable for that piece of
Exactly.
property.
It goes with the zoning.
Right.
Plan does.
So, just, I want to clarify that.
Anything else from commission, directions for staff? Anything else?
Can I get more clarification on the water runoff? I mean, if the water runoff goes through that property, but it goes down to the Lexington Heights area, and if their lake or pond, retention pond is overflowing now, is there a way to increase that volume to handle more with development north of there?
Well, as part of the planning process, they take a look at, this site will take a look at the water that they receive, and then they have to manage that water from the off-site and on-site. They basically detain it and then release it. So it's more of a uncontrolled to a controlled rate after development. And then so on as that develops further to the southeast, again, a new subdivision would do the same thing. They take the water, they control it, and they release it at a controlled rate. So it's just part of more of the platting process as they take a look at the bigger picture for stormwater management. When the Lexington Heights went in, they modeled the crossing. It was a box culvert crossing that waterway, and they modeled it so it didn't create a rise in the floodplain, based on that data back then. But at that time, we never had stormwater management for those subdivisions. It's platted prior to that ordinance change, and now we do.
So I think one additional thing that we can say is that the surrounding properties are uncontrolled runoff from farm fields. So once they are developed, they'll have to manage the water, and then it would control it in basins on those new developments. Will have to control the water and put in stormwater management. That may typically is in ponds or in dry basins, and that will hold the water and release it at a 2-year rate so that it slows the water down and shouldn't impact then downstream. They have to show through their engineering calculations that they're not affecting the downstream properties.
Yeah, I guess my feeling is, as far as it being the planned residential, it seems reasonable to change the land use map to that. And I know we're not considering exactly what the proposal is when we change just change the zoning, but to what's been looked at, so at least preliminarily for that development, it's not a high density development, right? It looks like it's coming in within the parameters of low density development. Am I correct in that?
Yes, you're right. This is really the first stage in the process. We look at the land use,
right,
and then if it needs to be changed, that's what we're talking about now. And then we go into the zoning, and it's an RP zoning that's based on the concept, idea, vision, density, and then if the zoning is approved, then we go into the platting stage. So all those steps require the review process through planning, zoning, and city council. So kind of at the first step.
And the reason for going for the planned residential versus just like a medium density or the low density residential is basically have a little bit more planning freedom to manipulate the structures on the site, things like that, fit them.
A mixed use, it's a mixture of structures from 1 and 2 family to multi-unit dwellings.
And this is kind of a oddly shaped piece of property in some ways, so it does give a little more flexibility in kind of in the development of that then too, I think, right?
Yeah, you got the floodplain and drainage right through the middle of it, so you got to work around those features.
Right. Yeah, I think the zoning makes sense, so that's my opinion.
So you're ahead of us on the agenda items here, but we'll.
Changing the land use map, obviously, to accommodate that seems reasonable.
So keep this going. So I think if we can conclude agenda item 3 in that discussion in terms of the land use, is there any other commission comments about the land use portion of it? And we'll continue on with the discussion of the zoning. So as noted, that'll continue on then to public hearing at the commission meeting at the February 27th commission meeting. That public hearing process will begin. Our next agenda item then is the rezoning of this same piece of property from A1 agricultural to RP, so the same southeast corner of Union Road and West 12th Street. So Mr. Sturch, additional information on the zoning aspect of this?
Thank you. So yeah, it's same 42-acre parcel, A1 to RP. That's agricultural, existing zoning now to planned residential development. So again, as part of the zoning criteria, we take a look at the land use, and we're recommending a change on that. We also look at the sanitary sewer service. Does it have adequate roadway access? And those are the criteria we start to look at when we look at development and change in the zoning areas. So just bouncing back to the land use amendment from the greenways and floodways and incorporate that planned development while retaining that greenways and floodway area. Floodplains area, that's reduced based on those firm amendments, and that's floodplain insurance map, which is the floodplain through that area. So then the land use, if that Planning and Zoning Commission supports that request, we want to move that forward along with the zoning. So again, it starts with the land use on this. Moving with utilities, there's existing sanitary sewer that runs through the middle of the site, and in that area, the development will tap into those. That Cherrywood sewer, it's an interceptor sewer that was put in years ago, and along with that, there's a tapping fee, per acre tapping fee, and that's collected at the final plat as those phases are developed. Water main is available to the site along 12th and Union Road, and there's a water connection fee when that water main went in along Union Road as part of the Wild Horse development. So that's collected as those construction plans are submitted when they start their phasing and putting the streets in. Roadway access. So 12th and Union are your collectors and arterials around the property. Those are adequate roadways to support this type of development. It does tie into or shows future connections to the east and to the south, and it's really important to have that connections in the existing neighborhoods. It disperses the traffic, you know. It has those connections to circulate and provide alternative access points in and out of the development and other surrounding areas. And as that development continues to the south and back to the UNI, you know, we want to look at those connections, how they tie into Union and 27th Street. And in the future, as those developments are in place, you know, we look at possible improvements to, you know, like 12th Street or Union Road. We might have to add some intersection improvements, capacity improvements to those areas. So the roadways are there, and they're going to add additional roadways to support the development. Other factors, the RP district, proposed RP is compatible to surrounding development. We have RP zoning to the west, which is the Wild Horse, and that's just pretty much single-family development. And then northwest is Cherrywood, and that's an R1 zoning. We have to, as part of this, we take a look at the concept plan, and as Marty alluded to, is we have this idea or the vision from the petitioners how they want to set up this Lifestyles campus for the new Aldea residents. And the idea is it's a 55-plus community for people that want to stay in town here. We did have a neighborhood meeting last night, and just kind of think it really helped the people out, the neighbors. Last time we met, they just kind of hit them pretty hard and not really understanding what this idea is. And so last night we met with them here in council chambers. We had a pretty good turnout based on the weather, so to speak. But I think there was a good discussion last night. It really kind of clarified a lot of things of what their vision is. And then along with the visual or graphic representation of that concept plan, we have a developmental agreement. So that's more the narrative portion of that. And that really calls out the type of improvements are put in, the streets, the trails, the density, other factors that go along with this. You know, there's a couple of larger buildings, multi-unit buildings. We'll take those 2 sites alone and run them back through the Planning and Zoning Commission for site plan review. So you'll see those in the future as they get ready to build those. The single family, the 2-family homes, I've got a slide for that, but those typically don't run through the whole site or design review process on that. So again, we got 1 and 2 unit patio homes. Site plan, well, I just said that. As part of the site plan, we look at building design, the setbacks, and the scale of the structure as it compared to surrounding properties and other dwellings. And we want to look at a nice screening, landscaping, and berming for those site plans. And then, you know, there's greater setbacks along Union and 12th Street for this district. The next step, you know, that's not part of this process, we would go into the subdivision platting. So that would be after the zoning. So again, that really gets into more engineering detail of the streets, the model of floodplain. They show a crossing over that floodplain area, so they need to model that. They want to make sure that it doesn't impact this area. I think, and then the stormwater view, but that last bullet, it cannot impact any downstream properties. So again, part of that stormwater management plan, they have to accept that water coming from the west and from the north and northwest. As it enters that site, they take it, they capture it, they control it in these basins that are shown on the plan, and then they release it at more of a controlled rate. So that's part of the whole platting process. It's outside, it's not the zoning, but we want to make sure everybody understands that those features, understand that there are a lot of concerns there downstream that we need to take a hard look at that so it doesn't impact those properties. So again, this is the development concept plan, 55 plus residential community there on the property, 1 and 2 unit dwellings. For the most of it, I believe there are, I think, 69 of those 1 and 2 units, 69 units, mixture of 1 and 2 unit. They show a couple of larger buildings there, multi-unit, for a total of 129 to 144 units. And that really equates to 3 to 3.5 dwellings per acre. Now, low density is roughly 6 to 8 dwellings, so this is half of that. So this is a very low density area. They also want to implement some open space amenities, some trails and sidewalks within the development and surrounding the development. They really want to take that drainage way, floodplain, and create a positive out of that negative, so it does have that amenity into the area. So just kind of running through some of those features along this development. We have a recreational trail along the east side of Union Road that's planned for the next couple of years. So that'll be a trail from 12th down to 27th Street, create a nice loop, really from 1st Street all the way down to 27th Street, and then tie it back to Hudson Road. There is a dedication involved in this, which is along the south side of 12th Street, so that would accommodate any future growth for intersection improvements. So that's identified on this, and that'll be on the plat as part of that platting process. So just kind of showing some ideas for the 2 unit dwellings. This is kind of the plan. You know, the 1 unit would be half of that. Same idea, but you're looking at some nice stone features and covered porches for that plan. And this is just a shot of the larger building that we shared last night at the corner of 12th and Union. And it's kind of a perspective kind of shown right at that corner. So again, this is just the idea. We're going to bring that back in the future for more of a refined look at that site. We look at, again, the berming, the landscaping around it, the height, the scale, the parking, the setbacks. So just they wanted to show that, just to kind of throw that out right now. So just kind of wraps up my presentation. So we want to continue that discussion tonight get some comments from the commission and the public, and then publish the public hearing for the next meeting. So we do have New Aldeia Lifescapes here to, and their team, the engineers, to address the commission and public.
Good evening. I'm Melissa Tierney, the CEO of New Aldeia Lifescapes. And we did have a very good meeting with dialogue last night with our neighbors, so I want to thank them for attending, and those that are here tonight. I want to reassure you that I have condensed my comments so that you won't be hearing all of the same things, but I think it's important to actually share with the Commission the process that we've taken at New Aldeia to get to this point tonight, and provide some history of what David was referring to about the concept and the vision for this neighborhood. We've been partnering with the city, as you know, for over 60 years. You may have known us first as Cedar Falls Lutheran Home, or perhaps now doing business as New Aldeia Lifescapes. We offer adults a plan for a variety of lifestyle choices, amenities, services, and care. And of course, we have a Christian mission to enhance life. Our distinctive vision embraces living better, so it provides our basis. We currently have over 300 residents living in very distinct neighborhoods, and that is in itself one option of what we do. But our Live Better, Live Well program, which is a registered program which launched in 2011, you may recall that, more broadly serves the Cedar Falls community. And I bring this into the conversation because in doing so, with the launch of that program, and in partnership with very progressive city leadership of the time, we turned a traditional aging paradigm on its head by pioneering a blended service model, bringing the community into the life of New Aldeia rather than removing residents from the larger community. And I'm proud to say that that model is now emulated throughout the nation and actually started with the good work that we did collectively here. So our leadership team has been planning for the last 5 years, doing a lot of research, trying to define and articulate surveys. What is our next unique offering for living better? And it's terraces at West Glen. Our vision for the new neighborhood at 12th and Union expands our belief that the community blended model benefits are where we are going as a city, a state, and a nation. And it aligns as well with many of the findings documented in the Cedar Falls Comprehensive Plan, as well as many other studies throughout the nation. We, too, are planning for an increasing 55 to 70 age demographic who may view Cedar Falls, because of its quality of life, for an active destination in which to live. And we all know that the baby boomers are changing things, and they represent a lifescape group with a very new view of living and quality of life after 55. Thus, our neighborhood plans and location must meet some very unique criteria, as the staff were reporting. It's been a little bit of a challenge to find just the right land location to give us those possibilities and features, because walkable neighborhoods that are intentionally designed with differentiating housing styles to meet those varying lifestyles, and they do want options for multi-story condos, single-family homes with quality construction and high-end finishes. Incorporated spaces for neighborhood socialization and entertaining, green space, green space, green space, and landscaping features, access to trails, recreation, and wellness, and an overall neighborhood design and aesthetics that enhance surrounding neighborhoods. So NAL is not a typical developer. I said this last night, and I truly believe this. I don't see myself as a developer. I see myself as someone who is advocating and very passionate about improving the quality of life for those that I serve. Our concept is probably not a typical development either. But at the end of a due diligence period, our goal is to purchase the property at Union and 12th and move forward. Terraces at West Glen is a significant investment for now, but one we see critical for advancing our mission while supporting projected housing demand and further enhancing quality of life in Cedar Falls. So I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Go ahead and open it up for any public comment on this item. Again, please feel free to approach the microphone, state your name and address. Commission, questions for staff, for New Aldea?
I have a question on water retention again. I do understand how you explained it before with the new development would have to retain its water runoff and their retention ponds would release it over a 2-year period. So would this improve the water runoff going south versus making it worse? Or be the same? We can't really...
It shouldn't make it worse. They are required to retain their water and accept the water that's coming into the site. And to retain their water, they are required by city code to retain a 100-year storm and release it at a 2-year rate. So of course, if there's extreme storms and extreme events, it's flooding all over town. So it wouldn't, just like any basin anywhere in town, it wouldn't contain, extreme flooding. But it shouldn't make anything worse for the surrounding properties. If the surrounding neighborhoods are having problems now with their stormwater system and their stormwater management system, that of course would need to be addressed by that development. But it shouldn't. This development shouldn't make things worse.
It's really, right now, it's an uncontrolled farmland.
Yeah.
So you're really taking that water and setting up in a more controlled and holding and releasing rate.
Right now, we're just considering, we'll be considering the zoning. Is just curious as to what, obviously, the part where the rubber meets the road is the actual plating and looking at these things more specifically. So, we've got kind of an idea here. So what we're looking at is not set in stone at the moment, and we're not approving that with the zoning if that occurs here in future meetings. What's the timetable look like, though, for the plating of this? Is that in the works right now?
Well, right now they're working with the property owner. They want to do their due diligence and get their zoning, and then proceed with the plat and then sale of the property. So their next step would be moving into that preliminary plat and the analysis of those stormwater features.
And that's expected to come here rather quickly then, is what I'm...
It's our understanding they want to look at that here in the coming months.
The plat will have to come in order for them to purchase the property, because it is actually a larger piece of property that will have to be subdivided before it could be purchased.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Well, in terms of the rezoning request from A1 to RP, I feel like it's part of our plan and fits in, so I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you. So this item, as with the change in the land use map amendment, this item then will continue on as a public hearing, the February 27th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Our next agenda item number 5, is the Green Hill Townhomes 2 preliminary plat. And 2 notes of receipt. The commission, on the prior item, the commission had received correspondence from Nick and Allison Raffanello for this upcoming agenda items. The commission has also received correspondence from Nathan and Crystal Roberts. So let's see, Ms. Lehman, if you would introduce and give us the background on this one again.
Yes, thank you. Sorry?
Is that better? Thank you.
So Panther Farms LLC is proposing to subdivide 5.3 acres of land near the southeast corner of the Green Hill and Hudson Road intersection, the area outlined in red in this map. This land is part of the 130-acre Green Hill Village development. So since this item's introduction at our last P&Z meeting on January 23rd, it has come to staff's attention that there is a general confusion about this site and its history. For this reason, as part of my presentation, I would like to go into additional detail about this project's background and the site. So really, the history of this site goes back to 1994, when the City of Cedar Falls completed a land use study to identify future commercial development areas along the Green Hill Road corridor. As a result of the study, the city recommended rezoning the now Green Hill Village property to PC2, Planned Commercial Development. However, due to neighborhood comments and concerns, a second land use study was completed and resulted in the property being rezoned to MU, Mixed Use Residential, in 1998. With this rezoning, the first master plan for Green Hill Village was approved, and I'll go into detail on the master plan in the next slide. This rezoning in 1998 included the entire area of the subdivision that's now being considered. It has been brought to the city's staff attention that a sliver of this property in question is shown on the assessor's website as being zoned R1, residential. This is incorrect. The assessor generally does a great job representing city details and within the Black Hawk County. Maps that they show are visual representations of legal documents. Unfortunately, errors do occur, and this is a case where one has, unfortunately. The website, when you go to their visuals, there is a disclaimer there for that reason. Zoning is city-based. The ordinance's legal description of the rezoning includes the area in question, and city zoning maps have correctly documented this entire site as MU since that rezoning. If anyone's interested, I'm happy to provide you the ordinance as well as the legal description. City staff regularly sends the assessor updates of our mapping, and we have communicated this error to them. In summary, the property under consideration to be subdivided has been zoned MU mixed use since the original rezoning in 1998. As a side, if anyone ever has any questions about their zoning, please feel free to call the city staff. We're happy to provide that information. And we did recently just release our own mapping website where you can check the zoning for your property online. That link is on the city website under Maps under General Viewer. As noted with the rezoning in 1998, the original master plan shown to the left was approved. It laid out the development pattern for the Green Hill Village development. In 2002, Walmart proposed to establish a 200,000 square foot supercenter at the northeast corner of the property. This proposal was eventually declined or denied by City Council. After the Walmart discussion, the master plan was revisited and amended the master plan as a result. The amended master plan that was submitted and approved in 2003 is shown here on the right. The intent of the MU zoning district is to encourage a variety of home types and neighborhood commercial uses for the purpose of creating viable, self-supporting neighborhood districts. Therefore, MU zoning permits a variety of uses ranging from neighborhood commercial to office to single-unit homes to condominiums. Both the master plans reflect these various uses and types. In March of 2018, a request was submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission to allow for a multi-unit residential development. The site was designated originally for single-family development and included a corner for commercial development. The area is outlined in, oh, you can barely see it there, in red on the image on the left, right here. So then based on other questions I had received from the last meeting, for the benefit for those watching in the commission, I would like to go through why that the master plan update was supported by staff back in March.
Iris, can you speak?
Sorry,
We've
yes.
got a few folks who are having a hard time hearing.
So since 2003, a number of areas in Green Hill Village were developed at lower densities than what was shown on the plan. 3 of those areas are highlighted in yellow on the map to the left. The area marked as A, that's right, kind of hard to see, one right here, was originally part of an office commercial section. It's now a multi-unit residential development. Area B, shown here. Sorry, it's hard to see on the screen. was originally noted as 2-unit patio homes with a density of 6 units an acre. It is now single family homes. Area C, here to the south, the last one, was originally meant to be part of a condominium development, but is now single family homes. As a standard planning practice, it is for single-family homes to be buffered from commercial areas by medium to high-density residential uses. The city's future land use map, pictured to the right, closely follows the Green Hill Village master plan and shows a general transition. Orange in this map indicates medium-density residential. The proposal of townhomes was consistent with the city's adopted future land use map. The intent of the MU zoning district, again, is to allow and encourage a mixture of uses. As the future land use map shows, medium density residential in this area, and since since other areas in Green Hill Village had been developed at lower densities than what was shown in the master plan, staff supported the proposed change to the master plan to allow for a wider variety of residential housing types in the area. The amendment was approved with this concept plan for townhomes. Townhomes are essentially single-family homes attached to one another to create a multiple-unit building of 4 to 5 attached homes, much like a duplex. The proposed layout shows garages located to the rear of the buildings to create a more pedestrian-style oriented residential character along the streets. The proposed preliminary plat and site plan under consideration tonight is the first phase in implementing this plan and follows a concept plan in detail. I'll go into specifics on the next couple slides. The question about notification has come up multiple times since the previous P&Z meeting, and I wanted to address it. Staff fully agrees that notifying neighbors of ongoing projects in the vicinity is in best practice and a good policy. It is for this reason, even if not required by law, that staff sends courtesy mailings out to the neighboring properties. Our records indicate that a courtesy mailing was sent to neighboring property owners for the master plan update, this subdivision and site plan proposal. The general mailings radius is about 300 feet from the project site. However, for both the master plan update and the second mailing for tonight's meeting, the generated mailing lists were expanded to areas beyond that. On this slide, you will see the letter that was sent regarding the master plan update and an image showing which addresses this mailing was sent to. The proposed subdivision plat follows the layout of the approved master plan and concept plan. The preliminary plat proposes to create one buildable lot, shown in red here on this slide. The remainder of the site will be platted as a tract for future streets, outlots for future development, and 2 tracts for detention basins. The detention basin, tract B, outlined in blue on this slide, will be installed with the creation of Lot 1. It will collect the water runoff from that lot and will be oversized to also serve future development. So that detention basin will also serve the rest of that area as it develops, so it more than can handle what's being proposed on that one lot. The developer's engineer is also here tonight to go into any more detail about the stormwater plan for the site or answer any other questions that the commission or public may have. A private alley will serve Lot 1, and sidewalks will be installed on the west and north sides of that lot, as well as the east side of Tract B. At the last commission meeting, concern was expressed about the amount of traffic that might be generated by this development. The city's engineering office notes that depending on the circumstances, corridor constraints, an urban 2-lane roadway can handle capacities up to 1,000 vehicles per hour during peak times. The proposed development shows a detention basin in place of one of the 6 townhome unit buildings that was originally proposed in the concept plan. I put together an image to illustrate what the site and full build-out would look like following this the subdivision plat. With this change, the proposed development at full build-out could have up to 34 townhome units. A townhome unit generates traffic similar to single-family home with about 7 trips per day, and per unit, for a total of about, this entire site, 238 trips per day. With the new street connections proposed with the subdivision, multiple travel routes of Norris Drive, Lloyd Lane, Addison Drive, the proposed Lauren Drive intersection or connection, it will provide to the nearby arterial and collector streets, traffic generated by this development at full build-out will not exceed the capacity of the existing streets. And also noted, if you looked at the concept plans, higher density developments were planned for original build-out in this area, so those type of things were taken into consideration at the street design. Oops. Parking was also noted as a concern for this development. The proposed plan, kind of jumping ahead to what I'll go into with the site plan discussion, currently provides one spot more per unit than required, so one per bedroom. The advantage of planning all of the required parking to the rear of the townhomes along a private alley is that it reserves the entire street frontage for parking without the interruption of multiple driveways onto the street. This particular layout also helps to reduce traffic congestion, as there are fewer conflict points since drivers do not have to back directly into the street. The streets are designed to accommodate parking on both sides. I'd like to note that another preliminary plat and final plat will be required once the developer is ready to move forward with development of the two other outlots on the site. And that will also include the street connection as well as the sidewalk connections for the development. The proposed preliminary plat is consistent with the approved master plan amendment for this area and meets all city subdivision codes. Utilities are readily available to the site. Staff recommends approval of the proposed preliminary plat, subject to the 3 minor technical comments remaining that are listed here, as well as any direction from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you.
We'll follow our same process. If the applicant is present and would like to speak this item, we invite him or her first to address the commission.
Hi there, good evening. Steve Trosky with CGA Engineers. I know that there's 2 agenda items that kind of address the same development, so if you'd like me to wait until the conclusion of the next item, I'd be happy to do that, or I can proceed right now, take staff's or your guidance.
We'll keep inviting you up. So.
Okay, happy to come up. Well, again, I'm Steve Trosky. I'm a planner with CGA Engineers. I'm here with an engineer from our firm, Adam Daters, and we're happy to represent the developer for the project. So thank you, Iris, for a very robust and thorough review of the neighborhood. So we're seeking approval for phase 1 of this. Again, it's 2 buildings with a total of 9 units. At full build-out, there will be 7 buildings with 34 units. All of it is allowed, as Iris mentioned, under the current zoning that goes back 21 years. So the units themselves are 3-story houses. They're 3 bedrooms with an office with 2 enclosed parking spaces. They're about 1,680 square feet per unit. They're going to be marketed between $200,000 and $250,000 per unit. And this is a price point that many buyers are looking at when they try to come into the Cedar Valley. So the intent, as you can see, is to have a row house type development, which really complements the neighborhood. No garage, doors will be facing the street. So again, as Iris mentioned, we think that's a pretty attractive option for people that want to move into the neighborhood. So the buildings themselves are built to a single-family standard, construction-wise. They're going to be marketed as single-family attached homes. So there's a few technical items. Traffic was addressed by Iris. Stormwater has been a question that can be addressed by Adam Daters as we get to that part of the meeting, but it does meet requirements. There's been some talk about a buffer to the south. The owner is agreeable to putting in a buffer. There are some trees, such as arbor vitae, that can grow 20 to 40 feet tall, and that the owner would be agreeable to put in. And they do have a 15-foot spread, so a row of those works as a good windbreak, but also a good visual break. So again, they're offered, marketed between $200,000 and $250,000, built to single-family standards, and each unit has its own utilities, parking, and individual entrance. So I think the main concern that we've heard throughout this entire process is that these could become rentals. You know, again, I'm on repeat here, but they're single-family homes that happen to be connected with a shared wall. They're built structurally as single-family homes. They're going to be marketed and hopefully sold quickly as single-family homes. The only difference, again, is that they share a wall. So the goal of this project is to get a variety of housing types into this very desirable neighborhood. So that was just a quick overview from us, but happy to answer any specific questions, engineering or otherwise, that may come up through the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe we'll wait for public comment and stuff too and give you a chance to address those and then also commission questions. So members of the public, invitation to speak to this item, ask questions.
Good evening. Chris Nolan, 1510 Athens Court. Nice job, Iris. I wish you were working with us. That was a great presentation. I think it's important you see where we're coming from as a neighborhood. We found out about this multifamily January 21st of this year. Two of our people then went to the planning and zoning meeting, I think on the 23rd or 24th, to get the specifics. It's the first thing we'd heard about it. None of us received a letter dated March 19, 2018. We have hired an attorney, and we have all signed a piece of paper that was notarized stating we never received that letter talking about your meeting in 2018. So we were blindsided a little bit. Asking to change the master plan to increase the density. At that time, the letter, we have since gotten a letter stating that our comments would be heard at that time. We were denied that right to have that comment at that time. I've been watching that on the Blackhawk County website since Panther Builders bought that in April 5th of 2017. I was not concerned about what was to be built back there because it was zoned R1. A large section of the land was zoned R1. And we knew that we would be notified if you were going to plan on changing that from R1 to MU. We went to a meeting, Brian invited us to a meeting, and staff informed us at that time, that was Monday, that the website's wrong. I've been in real estate 23 years. That's the first time I've come across an instance where the website is wrong, and then to find out that it's been wrong for 20 years and Blackhawk County won't change it, I'm thinking we got a little more clout with Blackhawk County than leaving something miszoned on the map that 300 and some realtors use every day to determine what the zoning is for a property. We were told by city staff at a meeting about that it was incorrect. The land was MU. So the information to us gave us a false sense of security with that property. The assessor site still shows R1. And I'm going to go a little out of order here, but because I just wrote a note here. Brian, you told us those are going to be 4-bedroom. You're putting a 4th bedroom at the front of the garage, and everybody refers to it as a 3-bedroom unit. Are those 4-bedroom units, or the potential of a 4-bedroom?
Am I able to speak on this, abstaining?
February 6, 2019, we received a letter from the city staff about a P&Z meeting to approve the first step allowing for preliminary plat to be the first step toward allowing development. I'm against the density being put in an area that has single-family boarding on 2 sides of the proposed building site. 2 of the buildings will have 8 units that will be 3 stories tall that will look down into the backyards and the back windows of existing homes. That's not, there isn't anybody in this room that wants that many units looking in their backyard, looking down into their backyards and into their windows. We have 168 apartments in Green Hill Village. We have 102 condos that started out much like the condos you are proposing tonight that are going to be single family, and everybody loves single family. But of the 102 condos that are presently in our subdivision that are about 11 years old, 44% of them are renters, which we like renters, we like people. We don't care whether they're owners or sellers, but you know that that brings a different flavor to a neighborhood. We can't tell you what's going to happen with this project if it goes through. We can just look back 10 years and tell you what happened to Green Hill Village with the condos they have now, that 44% of them are renters. So I'm firmly against it. I think it's a poor location for multifamily. I think it's better suited to single family. And I think everybody left in the room left here is from Green Hill Village, because we're quite adamant about that. The word bamboozled was used in one of the meetings. I think that might be a little strong, but we didn't see the headlights coming down the railroad tracks on this, guys, and we just don't want anything to do with it. We don't want to bring up traffic. We don't want to bring up water problems. We don't want to bring up anything like this. We just don't want it. Put single family in, more than enough places somewhere else to go with multifamily that doesn't butt up against two existing sides. So, thank you.
Staff, are you able to respond to about the number of units? I think for our packet it's
for the number of bedrooms. So currently the units are designed at 3 bedrooms apiece, or 3 bedrooms per unit, but there is an option to add a 4th bedroom on that bottom floor by the garage. But as we discussed, I don't know how many people want to do that. The units are relatively small, so they'll probably want to use it for storage. But there is a potential for 4 units, but currently proposed at 3.
Can you come back up to the microphone, please? Sorry, remember, this is being recorded, so if we can't catch you, we can't pick you up if you're...
The statement that was made was that there's room at the front of the garage for a 4th room, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we're probably going to finish that. What they do with it is up to them. That sounds like a 4th bedroom to me.
Sorry, thank you. Do you state your name and address?
Hi, I'm Tim Jarks. I live at 1521 Athens Court. My residence is directly beside this future development. I want to reiterate my support for the things that Chris has stated, and that the main point being here is 28 people were to have received a letter back in March of 2018 when this originally started, per our understanding. None of the 28 people received that letter. I would think that all of you probably were wondering, where are the people? Nobody's opposed to this? Okay. Well, I've not talked to one person that wasn't surprised that no one showed up. So my number one request here is that we reverse the train and go back to where we were in the very beginning, because none of us had an opportunity to voice our opinions. The first I knew about this was 3 weeks ago when I rolled into my driveway. My neighbor comes over and goes, "Hey, do you know what's going on back here?" I go, "No." He says, "Well, I just got a letter stating that there's a meeting January 23rd, or there was a meeting coming up, and I was at the meeting on January 23rd and heard about this for the very first time." Okay? Only 2 people knew about the January 23rd meeting, too, by the way. Nobody else knew about it. I didn't know about it. I received no communication in regards to it. Okay? I am requesting that this commission reverse its decision that it's made and revert back to the original multi-use density that this was to be. We do not want homes back there with, 4 bedrooms, you just will figure 8 kids, okay? And what's the goal is and what's planned, that isn't reality, and we all know that, okay? You can just go down to Ashworth and see cars now being parked on Ashworth, which is a main thoroughfare from Hudson Road through Green Hill Village over to Green Hill Road. Why? Well, there's 3 bedrooms in some of those homes, but there happens to be 5, 6 people, not families, living in them. So to say you're going to put, homes for families. Reality and what's the idea is always two different things. And that being that close to you and I, we all know what's going to be there, okay? And there is no ordinance that's ever been made by any council that will be able to control that. It won't happen. So our little homes there in Green Hill Village will be induced with traffic and two-lane roads. No, they're not two-lane roads when people are parking on both sides of the street. And I dare any one of you to drive down those streets with two cars parked on each side and drive through there with two vehicles. I'd like to see that. Also, there are people with families and kids that go take their kids up to get on the buses at the very corner of Addison and Ashworth and multiple other locations that would be involved with the traffic that will come with this. And there will be traffic. 4 bedrooms does not mean 4 cars. Okay? That's not reality. That's what we hope for, but that won't happen. I mean, if we're at 50% now with resident or rental properties from condos that were supposed to be homes for single families, we know what's going to happen there. So I just want to voice my feelings. I'm adamant. I'm opposed to this. I think it's wrong that this train has gone this far. Staff knows that we have told them that 28 people that received that letter never got it. And we want to have single family adjacent to any existing residential property that exists now. Okay? We were there first. You're changing our atmosphere, and it will affect our property values. Okay? Thank you.
My name's James Denny. I live at 4622 Hudson Road, and what you're wanting to build there is right behind me. I've been there 30 years, and back in '98, there was a lot of people that were notified. There was hundreds of people that we had to get a lawyer and go after because they tried to zone it unlimited commercial, and we thought, that can't happen. So they hired a consulting firm, come up with a great plan, and was promised single-family homes behind us to buffer us. For 10 years, I came in every year and talked to Marty Ryan. You still going to buffer us? Sure, yeah. It says R1, so I'm like it, I'm believing it. Okay, I got a couple questions. One is, did I hear it said that the law says you don't have to tell anybody that you're going to change something? I'm kind of wondering about that, even the ethics of it, let alone the law. I mean, when Walmart tried to go in there, there was 2,500 letters written to the city, and 1,000 people showed up. Stopped it by one vote, Elaine Falsgraf. What she said was, I like Walmart, and I wouldn't mind it being there, but I gave my word that we wouldn't put any big box stores there in this plan, this master plan. That vote stopped it. I've hugged her every year I've seen her. But now I'm here in 2003, or it was 13. The year after Walmart got stopped from being put in there, now I'm hearing that there's some master plan change. We didn't hear about any of that. Nobody got any notification. So ever since then, I've heard nothing. And like the other person has said, it's been R1 all along. And I've been promised every year it's R1 and we're going to have single-family homes. So just on those things, and I'm getting a letter too that said back in March there was something done. I keep hearing different things. I think we at least need to defer this until we get some right questions answered here as to what's going on, you know. It'd only be fair. I've even heard that at the last little meeting we had with the developer said something about maybe we just need to buy this and put what we want here that look nicer. And I heard that might be an option. There's another reason to maybe defer it until we start talking a little more about this and figure out a better plan. Thank you.
My name is Naren Gunasekara, and I live in 1518 Athens Court. I normally talk to audience of captive students, so I'm not sure how this will go. But so I came here in 13 years ago, and so buying a house is like the biggest investment that ordinary folk do. So I really looked carefully at places that are available, and Green Hill Village looked like they had a good plan with, I guess, single-family homes, and then down the hill, townhomes, and then at the end, it was apartments. And so we bought a single-family home. And the zoning also was consistent with that. So the area around us was zoned, including this was for single-family homes. So it was it was an implicit agreement between us and Green Hill Village folk and the city about the plan of development for this area. And so it was quite distressing to see that that plan has now, that agreement is going to be violated. Okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I mean, even if the city is going to rezone this area, then there is a due process, right? And as you have heard from other speakers before me, a part of that is to give notification to residents and hear their opinions. And I mean, it is, okay, so I come from a different country, and to be honest, if that kind of thing happened in my country of origin, I wouldn't be surprised. But to think that the due process did not take place here in Cedar Falls, I mean, it is disappointing and it's shocking. Okay? And most of my relatives and friends live on the two coasts, and I have been for the past 13 years a vocal advocate for Cedar Falls. Okay? And even as they, with a twinkle in their eye, sort of refer to us as flyover country, I mean, I have been a proud advocate, and this actually is so very disappointing. And I must say, for the first time, I'm having second thoughts about settling down and retiring in Cedar Falls after I leave my job. So as I said, I teach at a local university, and when I give exams to students, I tell them, if you fail your exam, it's okay. If you don't know chemistry, you can still succeed in life. Okay? But if you don't act with honor, then you will have a problem in succeeding in life. Okay? And I mean, Green Hill Village is made up of mostly middle-class families. There are teachers, there are police officers. Many of us have taken pay cuts in order to serve our communities. And I think it is really despicable that some people are trying to profit on the backs of these hardworking and honest people in Green Hill Village. And the last thing I want to say is that I'm an old guy now. I have more gray hair than most, and the dye that I use doesn't work so well. But there are times when you will look back on your life, and you may own a lot of houses, you may have built a lot of houses, but at the end of the day, if you don't act with honor, then sadly, your life doesn't mean anything.
Hi, I am Jessica Vickers. I live at 1531 Andover Court. I am the cul-de-sac behind Athens Court. I mostly want to speak about the traffic concerns. I have 3 children. Many of the people in here have several children. The feel of the neighborhood at the moment is very safe. The kids, I wouldn't say, are allowed to play in the street, but they get into the road. They get into the road a lot. I know one of our neighbors who would like to be here tonight was unable to get here. She lives right on Addison, where most of that traffic is going to go through. She has 4 children. She has to worry about the increase of traffic that will happen. When we take our children to the bus stop, we do see more and more traffic after those new condos and the apartments have been finished. The traffic has increased exponentially, and people just fly down Ashworth. My fear is high-density housing coming through Addison as well, causing further concerns about our children being allowed to just play and be kids in our neighborhood safely. We chose the cul-de-sac and the neighborhood we're in because we don't have to worry about a lot of traffic. That's why we bought our houses in that neighborhood, one of the biggest reasons. And if that goes in there, like some of my constituents have mentioned, we don't know that those are not going to become rentals that college students are going to buy and have, 4 cars for 1 home. We don't know that. How do you control that? You can't. So my biggest thing is keep it single family. If you have to build, keep it single family, so at least the number of cars going through there is families in the same situation we're in. They will be more careful driving down the street because they will have the perspective of family. That's all I have to say.
Good evening. I'm Robin Frost. I live at 4718 Addison Drive. And my home is a couple of houses away from the proposed development. Thank you for your time this evening to listen to our thoughts and share our concerns about the proposed development. I previously shared a letter that should be in your packet for this evening that has more detail. My primary issue with the proposed development is the change in the master plan made last spring. Unfortunately, despite what the city records say, none of the Green Hill Village residents received notice of the meeting where this change was discussed and approved. To remedy this discrepancy, I propose to revisit this discussion following the proper channels. I believe I speak for my neighbors when I say that I request the chance to share our thoughts and hear discussion on changing the allowable density in the neighborhood. Furthermore, I request a full neighborhood meeting to discuss the plans with city planners and the developer. I heard through the grapevine that there was a private meeting with the developer and a few homeowners, but this development will impact the entire neighborhood, not just the immediately adjacent properties. According to the City of Cedar Falls Comprehensive Plan, page 147, a medium-density residential designation means projects may be incorporated in a limited way into single-family neighborhoods. I would argue that the plan outlined and the intended future development does not represent introducing this in a limited way. Rather, it is a sudden transition from one neighborhood type to another. The comprehensive plan also says limited multiple family development may be permitted with special review and criteria. I would like confirmation that this proposal has received that special review and what criteria it is being held to. While you may argue that the proposed townhomes are not categorized as multifamily, a common sense interpretation says there will be multiple families living in the same structure. To me, that's a multifamily unit. The definition of medium density further explains that typical maximum density for a medium density residential designation is 4 to 12 units per acre. While the current plan appears to adhere to this requirement, if my math and my understanding is correct, future development in the area will likely increase the density even more, thus exceeding the density limitations. I also request that if townhomes are eventually developed, townhomes are not to be made available for rent, but for purchase to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood. There's no differentiation in the city's comprehensive plan between rental townhomes and purchased townhomes, which is unfortunate. This change would be an easy way to ensure the residents of the prospective townhomes have pride and skin in the game when keeping the neighborhood a desirable, safe place to live. Surely, the Fountains rental apartments located at the corner of Green Hill Road and Highway 58 adequately allow for rental housing in the area. I would refer you to my letter for more information about the flooding that occurred on the Athens Court Addison Drive area on Labor Day of 2018. I'm not satisfied that this incident has been adequately addressed by the proposed plans. Furthermore, I'm unclear on the location of the drainage pond or ponds. I've seen one or two at different times on the maps. I'm not sure about that. Finally, I just wanted to paint a picture for you. Imagine a couple who has done everything right in order to become homeowners. They worked hard, they saved, they delayed purchasing a home, they finished their schooling before settling down in the community that they've always dreamed of returning to. They found the home of their dreams, which may look modest to others on the outside, but is the nicest home they could have wanted on the inside. They talk about how much they love their home, its location, and the neighborhood, and the neighbors in the community. Now imagine that same couple learning what they thought their neighborhood was going to be looks completely different from the reality. Their whole world is suddenly uncertain because of the decisions of people they've never met and who don't seem to care about the neighborhood or the people in it at all. They may have to move, but how are they going to sell their dream home now that it will be surrounded by rental properties? They did everything right, but now everything is wrong.
Anyone else to speak to this item?
I'm Carmen Wilbur at 4808 Algonquin Drive, Unit 6. So I live in the townhomes there, and in purchasing my townhome, I considered it that it was a single-family dwelling like they're describing. And I have to admit, I have been very surprised at how many of those units end up being rented for a lot of college students. And that definitely does make an impact on the feel of the neighborhood. And it's hard for me to it's hard for me to believe that future townhomes, that even though the goal sounds really great to have them be a single family unit, it's hard for me to believe that that's truly how it's going to play out.
Any other public comments on this item? If there are no other comments, we will close the public comment period. So to make sure that if there's any other information or statements or questions anyone has, we're going to close the public comment period. So just want to make sure that if anyone has any other remaining questions, comments to be made before the commission, any new information to share. Okay. We'll close that public comment period. At this point, I'll invite Mr. Trotsky, our applicant representative, if you would like to come up, give you an opportunity to respond to some of the things that have been brought up.
Well, thanks again. Thank you, neighborhood. I know this is a passionate issue, and we travel around from town to town in central Iowa, and there's a lot of passion, of course. So thanks for coming out tonight and going through this process with us. Again, Adam Daters is one of our engineers. He can speak to some of the more technical aspects of this. But two things really have come out as I've been taking notes, listening to the neighborhood residents. The first is a process question, notification question. As an applicant and representative of the developer, that's something that we would have to defer to the city on. We can't comment on their notification schedule. But what we can comment on is the idea that these will become rentals. And I did a little bit of research, and there's a number of properties for sale in the Green Hill Village, ranging from about 235 up to 320. Some of you are realtors and will know specifics better than me. I'm not a realtor. But there's a broad range of properties for sale in this. And what that tells me as a planner is it's a desirable neighborhood, and you want people from all sorts of stages of life there. I'm not quite sure how sharing a wall with attached single-family homes somehow equates to rental more than a detached home. We've seen single-family homes that can become rentals. We've seen condos that can become rentals. Just because something is a detached home doesn't mean it can't be rented. So any home that goes for sale could be rented just the same. So to suggest that having a shared wall in these $250,000 listings is somehow a detriment to the people that are going to be buying these, I don't quite understand that. The comment was made about integrating a medium-density residential into a neighborhood, and that's something in the planning profession that we try to have. That's called life cycle housing, right? So your entry-level home all the way up to kind of your executive-level home. You want those to be intermingled together. And you know, a gentleman did mention that this is a middle-class neighborhood, and these are, you know, going to be geared towards middle-class families. You know, maybe someone does want to come back to Cedar Falls and say, I want a townhome where there's an association, so I don't have to do my driveway, and I don't have to worry about my maintenance. And if I buy a single-family home, I do have to do that. So there's plenty of buyers out there that are not looking for a single-family home, and just because you share a wall doesn't mean you're somehow more of a detriment as a neighbor. If you're building in a green field, if we had a green field, which we have a lot of here in Cedar Falls, you can kind of plan things out to a T. In a perfect world, we'd start with the most dense area, build that first, and then move out. And so everybody coming in as a single-family homeowner knows what exists. Unfortunately, Cedar Falls, well, fortunately, Cedar Falls has grown a lot, so that's not always the perfect process that we can follow. So we get to situations like this where sometimes we're backfilling. We're backfilling, going back to 1998. This was allowed back then. This commission made a motion. I do believe the council supported that in April of 2018 to move this project forward. So we're not suggesting that the neighbors' concerns aren't heard. They are heard. There was a meeting Monday night amongst the developer, the engineer, and some neighbors. And we thank you for bringing this up again and again so that we can kind of work through this. There are concessions being made, such as screening, if you want to, you know, the fear that someone might look down. There are trees that can be planted that can grow to a height to protect some of that. Phase 1 is really what we're here for tonight. And Phase 1 is 2 buildings, 9 units, a private alley. Traffic's going to go to the north. It's not going to go down south. Future phases will come back before this commission, back before you for approval at that time. So really, I'd like to focus on the 2 buildings in Phase 1, the required stormwater detention, which will be taken care of, and then maybe you know, get started on some of those screening requirements if that's what the commission suggests. So I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you may have.
Can you speak to the height? So the building height has been brought up, and apologies if it isn't addressed in our packet.
I just want to note that there's 2 items on the agenda tonight. This first item that is under consideration right now is just the preliminary plat. And I think Iris is then going to cover the next item, which is the individual review of those buildings. I know that was brought up by the public here that there are standards in the MU district that requires Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council review of building designs and site design for these types of buildings. So that will be covered in the next item.
Thank you. Yep.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, we closed the public comment period, so.
You got 2 and we got
Sir?
There are some misconceptions that were stated. When would we have a chance to speak again?
The public comment period has closed. I mean, we followed that process, and this is the process. Now it's time for the commission to have their discussion and follow through with our work. So as Karen has pointed out, so the current agenda item is the preliminary plat portion of this. I would like to hear from staff, if you could speak again to, there were some questions from the public regarding notification requirements, and if you could, I think it's important to revisit that again, explain notification, what is law, what is not law, requirements, and then also the city's standard practice in that.
So Iris can fill me in on any dates, specific dates that, she ran through quite carefully in the presentation. But this property was rezoned. So at the rezoning stage, there is a requirement for notification. There's a legal requirement for notification to property owners within 300 feet of the property. That rezoning occurred back in 1998. So regardless of what the Blackhawk County assessor cites, the assessor does not control city zoning. The controlling document for city zoning is a city's zoning map. And if people want to know what the actual zoning of a property is, they should contact the city for that. And it's unfortunate that the county has had the incorrect zoning shown on the assessor's map for a long time. And that's very unfortunate. But the city's zoning is controlled by the city and the city's zoning map legally. So the notification that happened in 1998 with the mixed-use zoning and the master plan that went along with that zoning, and then there were subsequent changes to the master plan, and that's done by resolution. It's not not considered a rezoning. So even though it's not considered a rezoning, there's no legal requirement for letters to be mailed. It is the city's policy to notify, because it is good public policy to notify surrounding property owners. And, all our records show, and it's unfortunate that people don't remember or don't believe that they received notification of that. The city's records, I don't think we can show. The U.S. Postal Service, we don't know exactly what happened during that time. I don't think we're saying that anybody's lying here, but the city's records show that notification was mailed back in April when this particular change to the land use, to the master plan for this development was changed.
Can I ask a question? 300 feet is what? A lot and a half, 2 lots? I mean...
So it's not very large, but for that reason, we increased, if you go to the PowerPoint, with that original master plan update, we did increase our boundaries, and we have a mailing list that was generated that we sent them to, shown here in this image. So we did increase the required, well, the standard practice from 300 feet to what you see here.
I guess I'll make a few comments. Unfortunately, it looks like we got a pretty big hiccup in our communication within the city on this whole matter, which is unfortunate. I'm sure it's not intentional on anybody's part that that's happened. And I know, having been on the commission for a long time, it's never been the city's intention not to have full communication and open discussion on all the items that come before the commission and the city. So unfortunately, the neighborhood didn't really understand what was going on with the most recent change to the master plan. It's true that this is a master plan that allows high density and that type of thing. Unfortunately, it was up until March. Sounds like we had the master plan showed single-family homes adjacent to the existing neighborhood, and then that was changed without anybody really realizing that, and complicated by the fact that the county's website is showing it as R1, just making matters worse. You know, I guess you say, oh, well, it's too bad, you know, didn't quite get that across everybody, but I think that is, you know, I don't feel comfortable moving ahead with something that's been not totally vetted at this point, and I don't know how we proceed from here, but you know, I don't feel comfortable approving something that, well, fits the zoning and everything, you know, fits the requirements as they are. There's, you know, it wasn't really fair that, you know, the community didn't get their say when we were making that decision, that prior decision. So, you know, we've got a really awkward situation. I don't know how to resolve it exactly, what the next step should be, but I don't feel it's appropriate to move ahead just based on, oh, you know, people didn't know what was going on, didn't have a chance to voice their opinion at the time in March when we were making that change. So,
Other commissioners want to weigh in on that?
I would simply concur with a lot of Marty's comments that it's difficult when there's a zoning discrepancy that was in place for 20 years, that it wasn't identified and adjusted. It was back in '98 that it went. Am I correct on that?
It's been on the city zoning map correctly.
But it's
on
hasn't been on the county.
The assessor site has, it sounds like it's been an error on the assessor site.
For 20 years? Is that, did I hear that correctly, that it's 1998?
It sounds like that's correct.
Like that. That concerns me that a mistake is not identified for over 20 years. And there are people that are looking at the county site not realizing they expect they're going to be consistent. So I have some concerns as well that there's been a lack of transparency and good communication on both sides.
I agree with what Marty and Deb said, but I'm not sure what the process would be to go back. What would we do?
So to go back, it has been legally changed. The master plan has been legally changed by the city council.
Mhm.
So to go back, the city council would need to amend the master plan and go back to something different. So the case that's before the commission and your purview and your charge in this particular case is to analyze this particular preliminary plat and to determine whether it meets the city's subdivision code. The larger question that's at hand is whether the city council, someone could apply for something to go back to a different master plan, and that would be then considered on its own merits. But the case before you right now is to judge whether this preliminary plat meets the subdivision code.
pretty hard for me to do that, knowing the overarching, you know, can't ignore the bigger picture.
So our options would be to vote it up or down, or defer it, or table it.
Right.
Correct?
We can get a legal opinion on that, but I believe that you, in a rezoning, you have a lot of purview to table an item. For a subdivision plat, I believe that state code would require that you judge it on the merits of the city's subdivision code. But if you'd like to defer the item for us to get clarification on that legal matter, staff can bring something back at your next meeting.
Well, you know, I would wonder if the developer would consider modifying the plan. You know, obviously, all the residents thought that was single-family homes, backing up on their property. I would be hopping mad too if all of a sudden I discovered that wasn't the case through no fault of my own, you know, conceivably, which seems reasonable that, I mean, the evidence suggests that people really did not know what was going on. And so I don't have a problem with the high density part of it, but I understand if I'm right across the street and it, you know, I think it's a single family home and now I'm gonna have a 3-story, you know, townhome, you know, I'm not too happy about that. You know, I'm wondering if the developer is willing to look at modifying that so there's a little transition, you know, that would help the neighborhood, or, you know, at least review that. It just seems like, doesn't seem fair to, you know, move this forward with, you know, the lack of communication that's occurred here. It just doesn't seem like I don't care what the rules say, it just doesn't seem fair at the moment to me.
At this stage, are we not past the point of no return? I mean, it's obviously an unfortunate situation, some of these things, but has the time not come and gone in the overall process for that? That's my feeling on it.
Well, I think maybe as Karen was explaining kind of what, to some degree, yes, because we have the item before us on the commission and need to make a decision about it, or we can defer it, we can make a decision on it this evening, or other changes, you know, to go back would have to be initiated through other zoning changes.
Yes, there would have to be some change to the master plan in order to allow it to go back to single family. And I think one thing to remember about the process, and I think you know, I think staff agrees that it's a very unfortunate situation that people feel blindsided by this. But the applicant went through a master planning process and has spent time and money to, based on that decision what the city council made to change the land use, to change the master plan. So there's a number of different rights here that have been established with the process that has been followed. So if you would like clarification on those rights and that the legal basis of this, I think that's a perfectly reasonable reason to defer the item to the next meeting, and we can bring back some clarification on those issues, and perhaps some clarification on, you know, any zoning can be changed, but it has to follow that same process. Would have to be a change to the master plan, and the city council would have to adopt that, so that the person that owns the property now has a complete right to also oppose that change back to the master plan, so that everybody has the same rights to do that. So I think staff would be happy to bring something back and to clarify that for the commission. Are you able? Sorry about that. Sorry. So the commission basically would have the option to defer this into the next meeting, and we can bring some clarification back on the legal matters for this particular issue.
So I personally think that that's important. I think that we need to go through that due diligence and get that information from staff and for the public for commission to hear that, and for the public to hear that as well. Is there a motion on this item?
I'd move to defer it to next meeting so that we can get a legal clarification on a process and points of view, I guess.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Please go ahead and register your votes. We have all ayes and one abstention on that item, so the commission has voted we will defer this item. We will get more information from staff in terms of legal implications, other process implications, So that will be presumably on our next agenda item, our next meeting on the agenda on February 27th. So that is item 5. Item 6 then, same property, is our Green Hill Village townhomes to site plan.
So since we're deferring the preliminary plat, and the site plan really hinges upon that, I would make the suggestion maybe just defer that as well, or if you would like, for those that are here, I'd be happy to run through the site plan architectural details of it, but it's really up to the commission.
Commission?
I would prefer just defer that, to wait until the next meeting to discuss it, because it seems it may or may not be appropriate, depending what's decided, to discuss it now, so.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, do we need
Yes,
that as a formal motion and
I would move
vote,
to defer
please?
it then.
Yeah.
Without,
I would second that.
There's a motion and a second to defer this item as well. Please go ahead and register your votes. So the same, all ayes and 1 abstention on that, so we will defer the site plan review as well. So that concludes our old business agenda items. We do have one item of new business. This is the nomination and election of officers, and I will call on Ms. Geruso, from a member of the nominating committee, if you would present our officers for chair and vice chair.
All right, thank you.
Maybe could we just pause and we'll let the public.
Wait and listen.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The nominations committee is nominating Marty Holtz for chair and Brad Leeper for vice chair.
You accept that nomination? Is there a motion to approve those, that slate of officers?
I move to approve that slate of officers.
And is there a second?
Second.
And all those in favor of approval signify with aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Thank you. Thank you, Marty. Any commission updates?
I don't think we have any commission updates. Oh, sorry. I guess we're no longer on TV because they're showing the UNI game right now, so.
Well, tomorrow morning
We'll be on the replay, though.
That's right. So the only thing I would note is that we did look at the bylaws when we were looking at the nomination for officers, and we did notice a few things that we might want to clean up. So staff would anticipate bringing back a few changes to your bylaws, probably. Well, we might wait till we have a meeting where there's maybe not a lot of things on the agenda. But, so just wanted to note that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Those in favor of adjournment signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Thank you. We are adjourned.